What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, Panthers Advice. Today, man, we're going to talk about the new GM, Dan Morgan, the former GM, Scott Fitterer, a little bit about Frank, Tepper, and the four quarterbacks from last year and how it all kind of played out. Let's dive into it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the history between Dan Morgan and Scott Fitterer and why some people really aren't happy with that hire. Let's dive into it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the history. Dan Morgan, as you can see over here on the right, he got his first executive coaching job, I guess, with Seattle in 2010. Who was already in Seattle? That would be Scott Fitterer. He had been there for about 10 years, right? He was an area scout. Dan got his first job as scouting intern. Dan gets a promotion raise in 2011. Who else does? Scott does as well. Then you're going to see Scott gets a promotion raise in 2015, as does Dan Morgan. Now, Dan would later go on to leave for Buffalo, but then end up going to Carolina in 2021. And who would he follow there? That would be Scott Fitterer, who would be the general manager. Dan Morgan would end up being the assistant general manager, and then now the general manager, as we know. So why aren't people happy with this hire? Because they feel like we just got rid of one guy who was making bad decisions, and now we bring in another one. Specifically, some people are talking about the Bryce Young trade. But let's look at this from a different lens, though, right? Let's say you're happy they got rid of Scott because they took Bryce Young. Well, don't forget it was Tepper who interfered with that, right? And Tepper has his hands on too much. But Tepper wanted Bryce Young. It was Scott who wanted C.J. Stroud. So, in reality, you may actually be happy with Dan Morgan being the new guy. Because Dan is basically a Scott 2.0. I mean, he was with Scott all the way here and then followed Scott to Carolina. So if that's why you're upset is because they took Bryce Young and not C.J. Stroud, that wasn't necessarily Scott's fault. That was Tepper's fault. Now, as for the trade, it's hard to say whose fault that was. Did Tepper say do whatever it takes to get Bryce Young to get that number one pick? I'm not sure. They gave up way too much, and as I've said time and time again, why do you give up your number one receiver to bring in a franchise quarterback? And the only guy you bring in is Adam Thielen. So as you can see, I'm not the biggest fan of Scott, but I don't hate him, right? But look what he said in this interview right here, and I think we should have seen this 2-15 record coming. Let's let it run real quick.
And we've been building to the point where we can take, a quarterback and drop him in. Now, he doesn't need to be the savior. He doesn't need to go over the top and make every play. Just rely on the pieces around you.
Did you hear what he said right there? Rely on the pieces around you. Now, who is Bryce Young going to rely on? Now, please don't get me started. DJ, Mingo, TMJ. Well, TMJ didn't play for the coaches. DJ was hurt for half the year. And Mingo, let's dive into Mingo real quick, right? Let's let this video continue. You had Bryce Young, CJ, Will, and Anthony Richardson. Why was Mingo on the team? Because of Mr. Steve Smith. Now, Steve Smith, phenomenal receiver. But Mingo, like I've said time and time again, he did not fit the offense. So now, not only did the Panthers take somebody I can tell you right now that Frank didn't want, they drafted a receiver that did not fit into Frank's offense. I mean, this is just getting better and better. So as you can see right now, nobody is on the same page. And as you're going to see, it starts to make even more sense. Take a look right here. You got Frank talking to Josh. Now, is this a problem? Not really. Until you can see who Josh wanted. You can see right here who Josh wanted. Will Levis looks like a Josh 2.0. If you go back and look at the film, Josh used to stand on 2 feet, right? He didn't open up his hips, kind of like how Bryce Young wasn't earlier in the season. I'm just saying. Remember Bryce Young, he was doing this. He didn't open up his hips, right? He was trying to throw the ball like this. Josh McCown could do that and throw for 60 yards. Bryce Young can't do that. Can Will Levis do that? You see who Josh wanted all along? It was either Will or CJ. Nobody was on the same page. Nobody, guys. So we can blame Scott for some of the trades and some of the picks, right? But as you can see, everybody talked about this coaching staff. Oh, this coaching staff is going to be so great. They're not going to be great if they don't get along. Like they say, too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, and this is why the Panthers finished 2-15. On top of that, Tepper obviously was too hands-on. But as you guys can see, nobody was on the same page. So basically, to wrap up this quick rant / introduction of the new GM, Hopefully this year, more people are on the same page. We draft people that actually fit into this scheme. We actually go into free agency and get somebody who's going to make a difference on offense. Adam Thielen did exactly what he was supposed to do, but he wasn't supposed to be the number one guy. That's just not his skill set. His skill set is taking advantage of that second or third corner, right? He's not supposed to be the first target. As you can see, I think it was the Buccaneers, the last game of the season, they were literally bracketing Adam Thielen. And just for reference, people do that against Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, right? Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. People were bracketing Adam Thielen. Guys, nothing else needs to be said. So, more videos on Dan Morgan to come, Scott Fitterer potentially. But as you can see, the Panthers never had a shot. On top of Scott's comments, the QB just needs to make plays with the guys he has. I mean, like I said, from the jump, we should have seen this coming. Let me know what you guys think. More videos coming soon. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy.